Beautiful. Beautiful. Welcome everybody. How many we got? We got people streaming in here. So this is the Pear Runtime launch Twitter Spaces. And we have got the crew behind this. I know a lot of you probably already know about Keat and the chat app that is just kind of proving the case, like what the crazy things that you can actually do with this. And so we're going to go ahead and so Keat has just hit beta recently, and Pear Runtime, the engine, so to speak, underneath all of this, has launched yesterday. And I'm already it's already buzzing with the little developer group that we have and the guy that I'm working with. Like, I'm really stoked to get into this conversation to talk about what this means, what this is. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. We will try to get to that towards the end of this. On that note, and I'll remind you when we get to that point, try to keep questions like succinct just so that we can get through a bunch of them. Try not to have a 2-minute question if you can narrow it down to 20 seconds. But I want to go ahead and just start off with introductions. Let's go Paolo first. How are you related to this? Who are you? For anybody who doesn't know, what is up left?
Hey everyone. So I'm Paolo Ardoino. I'm the CEO at Tether, CTO at Bitfinex, and CSO at Volpunch. How I'm related to this? Mathias, myself, have been working together for the last several years. I think 5 to 6 years ago, on peer-to-peer stuff, right? At Bitfinex, I always trying to use as much peer-to-peer stuff as possible. I started using some libraries many years ago for some internal project at Bitfinex that Mathias was contributing to. We have been both contributing a lot to open source projects. Matthias has set himself as one of the best people in the peer-to-peer development space. So we started really tinkering together, thinking about what we could actually build with the awesomeness that we had in our hands, and was again feels like now ages ago, and we went through several challenges, a lot of closeted development, because the old days came public when of course Pear Runtime came public yesterday, but Keat came public basically 1.5 years ago. But for many years we worked together in trying to envision this future of peer-to-peer development, peer-to-peer apps that could compete in a realistic way, because sometimes when you think about peer-to-peer, you say, well, the user experience sucks, is not at par with centralized apps. No, we wanted to create a playground and a fertile ground for future peer-to-peer apps that would overtake Web2, the colossuses of the Web2 space. It took a ton of energy, and it culminated with the yesterday's launch of Pear Runtime. So I'm here, as CSO of Volpunch, and also CEO at Tether, saying that to me this is like one of the most important projects that at Tether we are supporting, and we co-founded, because we really believe that there's going to be a mass liberation in the internet world. It will be a mass liberation of developers that finally all united all acting as peers can work to take down the centralization of the web. So this is just is a huge spark, but will be an enormous.
Oh, we lost you there.
Yeah, because we are using Twitter and not Pears.com.
That's exactly right. That was the problem.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is cutting me out. I'm sure of it.
as soon as you start talking bad about the platforms, you know it'll happen.
Yeah.
Well, at least
Yes,
the goals aren't very lofty, you know, like destroying Web 2 and replacing all of the major platforms. At least we're being humble about what you want to accomplish, right?
We like to make friends, you know. Tanner is known to not being controversial in the way it approaches projects, but you can see that in really, I mean, the Hole Punch is really the culmination of this on the tech side, or because on the Tether side we do it with stable coins, and we have a ton of new ideas around that. But on the tech side, there is nothing bigger than we could think than the Pear's movement and the Hole Punch technology.
Nice. Well, since we mentioned Mathias here, let's go over to him. Why don't you introduce yourself and talk about how the origins of this project?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I hope my headset is fine. Well, I'm Mathias. I'm the CEO at Hole Punch, and I only have one C title, unlike Paolo. Maybe I'll get more in the future. That's I don't know how he gets the time. That's impressive. But yeah, it's been a journey. Like Paolo mentioned, this is the culmination of 5-7 years of work for us, all culminated yesterday with yesterday's launch. This is like the amount of things we launched yesterday, if we got into it, would be, a day-long space. It's so much super exciting technology, all from the simplicity of the command line tools we launched that allows you to put couple commands, build insane apps that ships everywhere and run everywhere, all with the technology that we have battle tested and using for many years, all with the same things that's running on Keat, allowing you to really build professional production apps that are not just like necessarily fun projects, but actually big projects like Keat, that is, apps that have a business and run by a company and can be the scale you want. That's so exciting for me to finally be at the culmination of that. And I was telling the guys today that yesterday was the first time I slept really well in a very long time, because obviously it's been a lot of work. I'm at the lucky position of I can redirect a lot of that work to very, very smart people. But we clicked the button yesterday, we launched it, and it went freaking smoothly. And it's amazing. And I woke up today to check my Keat, as I do every day. And we have a very cool Pear community channel in there. There's an invite linked from pears.com in the docs. You should definitely join that one if you're listening in. But I woke up to, I think, 250 messages from people just building on day one, with all our janky docs, I'm sure, and just people just figuring it out, because it's all stuff you can just figure out. That was incredible, and that's day one, and it's just getting better from there. And we're already planning out the next thing we're shipping, and we're already planning out how to 10x this thing in the next this year. So I couldn't have asked for anything better, and also just reflecting on how we got here, and the team, and the partners, and Paolo's help and work, and the marketing teams, and everything. When you work in the Hole Punch Tether family, is just extremely committed people that only have one mission, and that's to disrupt and do big things. And that's an incredibly intoxicating environment to be in. That's incredibly exciting, and so happy to be here today.
Hell yeah. And David made it just in time. Dave, now that you've discovered the stupidity of mobile only for Twitter Spaces, why don't you introduce yourself, man?
Yeah. I mean, I was here. I was just not a speaker yet, but I am just in time as speaker. My name's Dave. built Pear with Hole Punch, Mathias, everyone. Really happy that you guys are digging it.
Hell yeah. Short and sweet. Love it. And let's jump to Paolo, Samson.
Sure. I'm Samson Mo. I am the CEO at Jan3, a Bitcoin tech company. I'm also the CEO at Pixelmatic, which is the developer behind Infinite Fleet, an MMO game. And I'm very excited about Pear Runtime launch and all the things that it can enable in multiple spaces, but probably particularly for games.
Oh, interesting. That's new. I didn't even know that. Giacomo, what is up, man? Last speaker.
Hey, everybody. Hi. I work with Paolo, and I see here Oleg and other people on the Plan B network, which is a new educational initiative that we started last fall. And actually, even before working closely with Paolo and understanding more what Pears.com is, I had some sneak peek. I remember the first time I was watching the Pear, the fruit symbols was on T-shirts in Lugano Plan B Forum more than 1 year ago. I didn't know what that was, actually. We just made some jokes on the female version of the T-shirt, but it was not very clear what was the content. Then in the Lightning Network developer school in Viareggio, we had somebody from Synonym, I see John also here, explaining us some feature of hypercore and some of the stack correlated to Kit. So that started to catch my interest. And recently I started to look into that more closely, and I'm very happy and eager to also integrate what we are doing with Plan B Network with the technology behind Kit with Pears and with the whole punch stack. So we will try to use it as much as possible to replace the centralized services that we are not using for lectures and e-learning. Like instead of using the same old stuff like Jitsi, we will try, or old ways to do login and authentication. We will try to integrate as much as possible this new technology. Actually, my interest in this kind of stuff is not recent. It's many years that I was watching the Bitcoin adjacent kind of freedom tech developing also in peer-to-peer communication and encryption. I was following the development of metrics and elements, the Fediverse and Mastodon, and I was even following Bitmessage in 2013. It's challenging because one of the things that Bitcoin has is global consensus, which on one side makes everything terrible to scale, but on the other side makes it easy for people to converge over a single network effect, which is very strong. While in freedom tech, more in general, in communication, information sharing, internet connection, in order to decentralize the internet, the challenge is fragmentation, because there are many different initiatives. Everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel. So even in the context of Bitcoin, there was a company doing Bitcoin adjacent peer-to-peer network, was called Blockstack. I cannot tell you what is called now, but it's become a shitcoin company. There was TBD, Web5, the Nostr, a lot of experiments in different fields, in different sides, attacking the problem from different angles. And the difficult thing is to find a strong Schelling point, a point of convergence, a point where everybody can start to build on the same stack instead of just reinventing the wheel every time. So I'm looking forward to see if this experiment can succeed in becoming the gold standard of peer-to-peer communication, where everybody can build upon. And I'm very optimistic, and it looks very cool.
Sweet.
You mean the Bitcoin, right?
Do what?
Giacomo, you mean the Bitcoin standard, not the gold standard.
Digital gold standard. Digital gold standard.
Oh man,
but finding that convergence was definitely our goal, and obviously it's an iterative process, but we're aligned on thinking on what you're saying there.
Yeah, and just as a personal note, because I'm right there with you, Giacomo, is that I played around with Bitmessage, I like played around with Mastodon, like it's just kind of been, since I was like 13 years old, like I've just kind of run through all of the various tools for the whole P2P options and all the attempts to kind of revive this. Since kind of the peak of it in 2006, 2007, when it took a turn and everything centralized into platforms. And I gotta say, just personally, I've never been as excited about anything in that space, in towards that goal as this, like hands down. And that is what, I mean, that's obviously why I am here, wanting to ask all these questions and be a part of this, because I don't know, I'm super stoked about it. So let's just start with the simple, the easy question. Easy question. What is Pear Runtime? The obvious question. How is this going to change peer-to-peer app development, and why is it that this one has that potentially powerful shelling point around accomplishing the goal, where so many have basically died on the vine in the process? And maybe we'll just start with Mathias. I'm curious your answer on this.
We'll start with Mathias and we'll end the stream with Mathias, because Mathias will talk from now on about how cool Pear Runtime is. No, just kidding. Well, you know, Pear Runtime is obviously many things, but like I think the succinct version of it is it's a powerful, simple runtime that runs on mobile, desktop, and embedded devices when we get to that, but the model works. That allows you to run apps on your computer and apps on the peer-to-peer network and develop these apps extremely easily. It's one of those things, and this is actually why this is going to massively succeed where many things have tried and failed before. It is one of the things that's really, really good at is doing one thing and one thing only, and that's just running apps and distributing apps. It's all about app development and Pear Runtime. So it's a program you install. Actually, if you're running Keat, you already have it, because Keat is running on Pear Runtime. That if you link the CLI up, you get a bunch of commands that just allows you to start developing apps really easily. And developing apps with Pear Runtime is as simple as making small HTML apps on desktop if you've ever done that, and on mobile React Native apps, but actually it works with any kind of front end you would want to. That's one of the flexibilities of it. And it's just really, really, really good at allowing you to make those apps and distribute those apps and distribute secure updates to those apps anywhere in the world, all through the Swann, all through the peer-to-peer network, with exactly the same technology as we're using of building Keat. And I think one of the things we really invested in, and we've been developing like high-quality JavaScript and Node.js code for many years. Me and David have worked together for many years also on figuring out what good JavaScript is. And one of the things I think we got really good at is knowing exactly where a project starts and where a project ends in a good way, where it knows exactly the kind of modularity it needs to bring to the table. And what Pear Runtime brings to the table massively is just the ability to distribute and run these apps in a way where these apps can do anything you would want. It just gets out of your way. You can make apps that is a Twitter competitor. You can just make little fun apps. You can even make an app that just shows fun memes. You can also make a chat app like Keat. And the runtimes just allows you to package that up and distribute them without any infrastructure, just all with the peer-to-peer networks, super secure, any kind of strategy you want. And the modularity here just really, really, really is insanely powerful once you get into it. We just talked about the fact yesterday that when we shipped Pear Runtime, the build process of building Pear Runtime is built on Pear Runtime. So we use Pear Runtime to build Pear Runtime, which is pretty nuts because it's just an environment that makes it really easy to make applications. And Pear Runtime is an application like anything else. We use Keat to coordinate releasing Pear Runtime, and we use Keat to coordinate signing the build, because we signed the build for the peer-to-peer network. So we multi-sig that build, so it's super secure, and we have a review process. We use Keat for that. So that's another app running on Pear Runtime. And then we distribute it obviously to peers, and peers distribute themselves, and we run a couple of peers always to help distribute the build, and that's also run with Pear Runtime. So it's just like, once you get into it, it's like Pear Runtime 5 levels down, and that just shows you the flexibility of this. So to me, as a developer, it's kind of like almost like an operating system of the future, where it's just a small thing that just knows what it wants to do, and it does it really well, and it just allows you to run these apps super securely. It's also updating itself over the runtime. So whenever we sign a new build, you get the newest version first. So you never have to worry about users like running on an old version. It's just very, very easy to develop for. It's very flexible. And like I said, that whole thing where you can just make one app where the peer-to-peer engine of that app can be shared between mobile and desktop and whatever you want. That's just like, I've been promised that many times. I did a lot of Java development in the past, and that was never true. And the first time I ever actually deployed something where that was true was Keat, because with the Keat, we share all the code between all the environments we deploy it in, because it's just JavaScript running on our engine, and the engine is the same in every environment. And that's just, that's taking us to a whole new level of productivity as developers. And from a business point of view, it just means that we iterate faster than ever, because it just means that all the actual boring stuff about making apps just gets out of the way. All of the annoying cost, scaling cost, deployment cost gets out of the way, because the runtime just handles that. And David and his team, who's making Pear Runtime at Hole Punch, managed to take all this, what you think is complexity, and just wrap it up in a little tool that has 4 commands, and it just works. And it's really incredible, and it's super modular. It's all open source also. You can go look at it at GitHub, and it's only getting better. And like I said, me and David had a little celebratory meeting today where we're like, hey, it went well, and we're just already like, oh, and now we need to ship this, and this, because there's just so many things we can so many ways we can iterate this tool to be so much better, and that's just like. Like I said, nothing like it before, but also kind of like the combination of our own thinking and dreaming, writing JavaScript apps and writing just apps and doing development and doing infrastructure deployment for the last 7 years. It's incredibly cool. Everything we do runs on top. Nothing hidden. Super simple and just really, really powerful things, and all built by a very, very passionate team. You should check it out. And again, if you have Keat, you're already checking it out because you're running on Pear Runtime, and super exciting.
So in other words, after 7 years of grueling work, you can finally get the work started.
Oh yeah, and that's not even scratching the surface, because if you start picking this thing apart, there's like, I told another guy that's recently, there's like 7 Nobel Prizes in software development in there, I think, because there's just so many really, really hard problems the teams had to figure out, that all from gnarly JavaScript integration, native things linking on different platforms in a very novel way, so all this stuff works, that they just all figured out because they're just dedicated people. And that's just sitting under the surface of this thing, and you don't need to care because they figured it out, and it just works. And you can make apps with this thing. It's JavaScript, but it's like, if you want to, you asked for this a lot, Guy, like, if you want to transcode videos natively, because you don't want to do it in JavaScript because JavaScript is not good for that, you can just build that, because the runtime supports loading native stuff like that really easily. We have an interface for that that's just really powerful and flexible. And there's really no place where this thing starts and stops in that way, because it's, like I said, it's like an operating system. You can do whatever you want. You just have to tame it. And so it's a beast, and it's probably the most solid thing technologically we ever launched in our careers. And and it has those final thing. It has finally like that peer-to-peer aspect also of like, we make it better every week. Every time we make a new release and we multi-sig it, that benefits everybody. It's kind of like if you are running Linux and they upgrade the kernel and it's faster, the computer is faster. That's the same thing we run here. But this kernel is tiny and it's just know what it wants, and it's really, really good at it. So yeah, super exciting stuff.
Hell yeah, yeah. Real quick, David, you and I have never actually spoken before. So officially, really good to meet you, man. But same question to you. What is this to you? What does it mean to have zero infrastructure costs for a developer or a business? Like, Like, why are you here, so to speak?
Well, I mean, to answer the infrastructure cost question, if you think of Telegram, what does it cost them per user per year? And that cost is going up. I think it's like 700 million a year or something, right? So Keat doesn't have that cost. I think that's huge. Thanks for bringing that up. But what is Pear Runtime? Well, I think Mathias described it pretty much to a T. It's just a few commands in a CLI, and with those commands, you can create peer-to-peer applications. You can create peer-to-peer systems as well. You can create terminal apps and desktop apps and make them do things together. We have a really cool process of deployment set up that uses Keat, and it uses these things in a peer-to-peer way to so that we can sign builds with multisig in a Keat room. There's a lot of versatility between Pear and Keat, and Keat is built on top of Pear. So it's if you have Keat, you already have Pear. But the entry point to Pear is the CLI, and that's the behind the scenes, if you like, of Keat. It's the way you can build things like Keat. Like when I learned JavaScript when I was 12 when I was a kid, and like the thing that I loved about it was the rapid iteration cycles. That's what got me hooked. And like I couldn't get on with Java. I still can't get on with Java because it's like there's just too much ceremony for like a kid's brain, right? And so I think that like the whole goal with all of this in creating Pear Runtime, the whole thing to keep in mind has been like, how would 12-year-old me like be able to understand this? And like, you still have to have an interest in computers, of course, but like, there is definitely that's really been what we've been going for. And so it really, like, if you just like watch the videos and read the docs, it actually becomes and use it a little bit. It to me it feels more intuitive now than anything else. Everything else is frustrating because of this.
That's a funny way to put it, because just in like my uses and like what I'm wanting to build with this, like I got roped into this just because I couldn't find a different solution to the absolute frustration of doing what I thought ought to be a simple thing in this day and age. I feel like there's like 20 to 30 years of incredible internet development, and there's still some simple problems that somehow shockingly have only just gotten more bloated and more confusing. Mm-hmm. Like they've just gotten worse with time because we never actually solved them. And it's amazing how clean this could be as a solution to those things. It's just, if you want to take that and add a comment, but like that's just something that has stuck with me.
I totally agree, man. I feel that like when the internet was sold to the public in the 90s, like once it was starting to reach that commercialization point, the angle was like what we've built now. I feel like a lot of the sort of hype around it was like, hey, like it's like people connecting together, and when I started learning about it, I thought that was how it was supposed to work, and so I kept trying to make it work that way, because that's what was sold. So I think that like I think that this I'm very hopeful that this creates a new the Cambrian explosion of applications. I really am hopeful that this is the trigger for it.
Yeah, hell yeah, me too. Damn it, me too. I wanted to ask Paolo something. Paolo, so you are the head of two insanely successful large centralized services, Bitfinex and Tether. Why all the peer-to-peer stuff? Why make all of this investment here?
Well, first of all, I'm a developer. Probably the first cool job that I ever had in my career was building a peer-to-peer resilient network for battlefields for a public Italian company. So, and I was 18 when I had that, when I started that job. So the idea of, I'm a sci-fi fan, I always had the concept of building things that resist to the wrath of God, to the apocalypse, right? So if you build something that only works in the best case scenario, I think that you are only using 10% of your you're using only 10% of your brain power. I mean, as humanity, we should know better. We should know that we should build things that are much more resilient. We have seen throughout the history of humanity how things can turn south really quickly, and yet we keep building things that as soon as something goes wrong, everything comes to a stop, right? Imagine like WhatsApp or like Zoom. Imagine if there is a downfall in society, there is a social unrest. Those things will stop. Those are the things that will stop working before anything else. There is no doubt. So those are instrumentals of mass control. So the only way to create apps that keep, imagine if you are a country and, you are inside the country, all the population of the country will get, and outside the nearby neighbors of this country will cut all the internet lines around the country. No one inside the country will be able to communicate because we are so hooked to WhatsApp, Telegram, and so on, that without those, the entire government will stop. Entire families cannot talk to each other. Parents cannot talk to their children and so on. It's like that. Heat is the only tool that can make that happen and can solve the problem and allows people to keep talking, even in small communities, is the fractal system for communications. And so extending this pattern to everything else was extremely important, right? So, and look, there are a few cool things to know about what we are doing with Pear Runtime, Kit, and Hole Punch as a global vision. I think you asked me why I'm doing this. So I founded this with Mathias for the very same reason that is actually exactly aligned with the ethos of Bitcoin. It's exactly aligned with the ethos of Tether. So at Tether, we think that we build surely a centralized stablecoin. It's important to say that USDT is not Bitcoin for sure, but the ability of servicing, the last mile, like to provide services and fair access to, financial services through Bitcoin and USDT was the ethos of Tether. And we think that creating unstoppable tools, and with Tether, we are building a ton of stuff on top of Bitcoin as well. We are funding RGB. We are funding and giving grants to Lightning Network developers. So everything that we do, we have this motto at Tether called unstoppable together, right? So if we build things as peers and we keep building technology that can be embraced in an easy way, then we can create a huge movement. And first of all, as I think Mathias and David expressed really well, the problem so far is that every single attempt and approach to create something peer-to-peer and a decentralized communication system really failed. Failed because for multiple reasons, and I know that I'm going to be not, I will be considered controversial by some of the listeners, but to me, Nostr is not the ultimate approach, right? It's something that can work until it gets too big. And I think humanity now can see with Pear Runtime and with the Hole Punch protocol and libraries how it should be done. I think this is the ultimate solution to build peer-to-peer apps. There is nothing. I mean, it's like how Michael Saylor says about Bitcoin. There is no second best. I don't think there is a second best when it comes to peer-to-peer communications and building peer-to-peer apps. The difference here is that what we did with Hole Punch is making it available and creating a simple box where people can actually do things. If you asked anyone 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 1 year ago, do you think you can create a nice, reliable app, peer-to-peer with nice user experience? they would always say, oh, no, because, I mean, peer-to-peer is nice, it's cool, but it's niche because we'll never work in the real world because it's too complex, people don't understand, and the user experience sucks. Well, of course, with Kit, there is still some way to go to improve the user experience, but we have a room with 1,500 people in that room, all peer-to-peer, with no central server, all talking together. So we are demonstrating that actually is possible to build something that is usable, that is scalable, and doesn't have any central servers or central relays and so on and so forth. So it is a big lie that we need central infrastructures. You can use data centers to have backups and many interesting things, right? So if you need like a super powerhouse to compute complex large language models, that's fine. But people should talk to people without any intermediaries. It's like Bitcoin put in touch people and allows them to transact without intermediaries. So to me, Allpunch is and the Pear Runtime are the Bitcoin communications, following the same ethos. And the reason why Tether is behind this is because, I mean, we have the shoulders, we have the war chest to make this happen, because we are ready to die on this hill. We have ready to spend a lot of money to make this product and this movement successful. So we're in the best position to make that happen, because for us, we have been extremely lucky, as you could see from our recent attestation. We are making good money, and we believe that is our duty to reinvest part of that money to change, to bring the same philosophy to the same philosophy that made us successful, that is basically the freedom philosophy that Bitcoin created, into the communication space. And it requires a lot of investments, because it's true, I mean, Allpunch don't have costs, right? Of course, there's the development cost, but even if they had 2-3 billion users, it wouldn't cost anything more than what it's costing today. But nevertheless, making people understand, creating an enormous educational movement around the powerful potential of the Pear Runtime and Allpunch technology is going to be an expensive exercise that we're ready to undertake just because we think it's the right thing. Sorry for the long rant.
No, that was great. That was great. And I want to go right into kind of the technical part of this, like what is the application of this, like where can we use it? And one of the things actually that you brought up, I just want to add a little personal note on this, is that like for the last 3 at least months or so on Twitter, I've been shadow banned. And so even when I'm talking with people that I'm following them, I'm following them and they're following me. I think it's Bashco I was trying to have a chat with, and he wasn't responding or didn't seem to be getting any of my messages. And so I DM'd him and gave him a screenshot of the chat, and he screenshot his, and all of my stuff is hidden. And one of the things that got me, I've always known, you always have in the back of your mind, it's you don't own this network, but you kind of operate as if you do, right? It's your social media. That's how I get in touch with everybody. Twitter is still, for better or for worse, the best way to get in touch with the largest group of people in Bitcoin. And it's funny, over the last 3 or 4 months, just how clearly I don't own shit. They can take it away from me in seconds. I can just people don't get my DMs sometimes. My brother will just be I haven't seen anything from yours, and he will go to my stuff. Stuff doesn't even show up in my feed. And I've even gotten notifications that I'm labeled as a spammer. And it took me 2 months to get in touch with support. I have to go beg somebody, be what the hell, why? I don't even know what I did, why? And then I've gotten nothing but canned responses. The support is comically retarded. It's just so unbelievably bad. I'm more frustrated talking to support than if they just wouldn't answer my questions. And I feel such a relief when I go over to Keat, and I'm just nobody can get in the way of this. This, it's so important that we actually own our networks. It's crazy that we don't, that none of it is ours. There is a platform, there is an owner at the top of this that can just just decide what people should or shouldn't see. And so that's just something that it's been fresh in my mind because my two main things are literally like Keat, or my three main things are Keat, Nostr, and Twitter still. And it's just hilarious, the dichotomy between those in kind of the power that I have. But I wanted to go over to Samson on this one because you brought up a game that you were developing part of, working on a project, and how this could relate. How does this fit into this? Because this is actually new to me. I don't know this project. Tell me about that.
Sure. But before we get into that, I want to touch back on some of the points that Paolo brought up, specifically Nostr, because you're talking about it too. And in Giacomo's long intro, he was talking about shelling points and getting everyone to work on the same tech stack. So when Nostr launched, there was a lot of fanfare around it, and everyone's excited about it. And I remember talking to Paolo back then, and he was saying, well, the architecture is wrong because you're still relying on centralized relays to route. So it's just data you own, kind of, but you're still relying on that central point of failure or multiple central points of failure instead of a single point of failure, like, say, for Twitter. So my point is, what is the path to get to that shelling point? Because you have this big, vibrant, very passionate community of Nostriches, and it has legs, and it has good usage, good following, but I think for people that are more technical, they understand that there are failings there, but the users don't seem to understand or care about that. I still remember in Uvita, when I went to Nostrica in Costa Rica, I was on a panel with Rockstar, and I said, well, one of the key things that Nostr needs to do is to make it so that anybody can be a relay. So is it that we need to, like, someone has to build a Nostr client that is powered by Pear Runtime, where you are your own relay, and get that to some level of popularity? Because I know that those guys know, but like the developers behind Damas and everything, they know about Hole Punch and they know about Keat, but I don't think they see it as a problem, and that's already an issue because they're closer to the tech than the average user, who is even further removed from all this technical discussion and nuance.
Samson, can I give? Guys, sorry. Do you mind if I jump in here?
Yeah, please.
Because my main point is that I think is put in this way is fairly simple to understand. Is the entire concept of peer-to-peer is that, it is in the name. Everyone should be a peer. If you have suddenly, as in Nostr, a super peer, then feels like less than peer-to-peer. If you have a super peer, it means that someone has more privileges or is more important in a way than you. Sure, everyone can run a super peer, but it means that we need more skills. You need more money, because it costs money to run a super peer. Because I remember some of the founders or the Damos app were complaining about the cost of running a node, and because it was blowing up. So in a peer-to-peer scenario, the first time, when you think about the technology, right, has to be symmetrical, has to be clean, has to be simple. If you have the complexity, or if you have, alien, solutions, then you are just creating a point of failures. So if in a peer-to-peer system, so where everyone should be a peer, you are the super peer, that means that you are not designing it correctly. Is the beauty of technology, in my opinion, is that it's not subjective technology, right? It's not subjective that one thing is better than another from the technological point of view. Either works or not. It's physics. Technology is basically physics with a little bit of maths around and so on. So, and history has taught us this really well. So in a way, Nostr is similar to LimeWire or Kazaa, where you had peer-to-peer file sharing, but you had centralized indexing in a way. And they ended up badly until BitTorrent came and had, completely peer-to-peer indexing through the DHT, this is distributed hash table, and then peer-to-peer connectivity to share files. So I'm not saying things that just, for me, I like the fact that Nostr put peer-to-peer on the map and showed how.
I think we lost him.
Always with the Twitter. Elon's just like with his finger on that button.
Yes, yeah. So, well, I would say that basically, I think that Nostr showed us that how important it is for people to have a peer-to-peer social network. Just the technology is not right. And again, it's pure objectivity, so it cannot be subjective, the quality of the technology.
Yes, Giacomo, what you got?
Yeah, I very much agree. I'm also very interested in discussing the similarities and the differences with Nostr, which for many Bitcoiners appear to be the closest thing to a Schelling point to build upon. But I agree with Paolo and Samson that for many reasons it cannot be the initial Schelling point. Mostly what Paolo said about not being peer-to-peer from the start. There is an interesting nuances, in my opinion, in this, because we know that every decentralized system, because of economies of scale, tends to build up some level of specialization. Like even Bitcoin, every Bitcoin node is a Bitcoin node, peer-to-peer. But then you have the miners that start to amass hash power that other nodes cannot have. Some miners have a node because they are mining pool, but some other miners are just hashers. Then you have light nodes with the wallets. You have LSPs. So even in Bitcoin, you have specialization and differentiation. The problem is that if you build a system which has a peer-to-peer architecture, and on top of that, you create some kind of specific roles, then in case of failure of those specific roles, you can still gracefully fall back on the previous decentralization. So let's assume that in Lightning, most big LSP will close down. Sure, that will create problems, but there is a graceful failure mode in which basically every node can, at least in theory, in principle, by design, it can go back to be one peer just like the others. If all the great mining pools and farms shut down, our Bitcoin core can be reactivated to be a miner in a worst case scenario. So you have this kind of fallback scenarios. The problem with Nostr is that like other technology, including like the Fediverse, like Mastodon, they assumed the outcome of economies of scale. So they assume that eventually you will have specialization. So you will have this big hub and spoke system with this kind of specialized professional service provider. And so they designed the stack directly to distinguish the service provider from the nodes. The problem is that in this architecture, when you shut down the service providers, there is no graceful fallback to the previous system. Instead, on top of something really decentralized and really peer-to-peer, you can have an evolution on top that will build up maybe some kind of more there will be probably in the future if Pear, sorry for my pronunciation, because in a bad English Italian, the word play between peer and peer get lost a little bit because I say it the same way. But anyway, if you use this stack, this technology stack, to build the future of the internet, then eventually you can have some big nodes taking on many of the responsibilities, like you have it in Lightning with LSPs. And then when those nodes get hit and get stuck, then you can fall back on the previous state of the system. The second problem, I think, is that the Nostr was starting with the assumption that the only thing we have to share is a note, is text, is tweets, basically. But the problem is that the whole internet stack is broken, not just Twitter. Twitter is an internet services which is broken because it's heavily censored and centralized. But if we want to replace Twitter, first we have to replace the internet. And the initial design of Nostr, unfortunately, doesn't scale up from text messages, from tweets to general connection, general computer-to-computer communication, and try to put like machine-to-machine communication in Nostr is possible, but it's very, very hard. It's not conceived for that. So probably this stack has the chance to go the other way around. But I agree with Samson to a very large degree that we probably could find the Schelling point that adopts this technology as the main technology, but also the NOS community as part of a whole movement toward the decentralization peer-to-peer goal. So the NOS community is very, very cool. I think that as a social phenomenon, we cannot throw it away. It already represents a strong Schelling point from the let's say cultural point of view, social point of view. It's just that the technology underlying it cannot really scale to replace the internet, unfortunately. So we need something better.
Yeah, there's the big distinction in my mind when I think about what that challenge is and what that difference is the same thing that I've run into in like trying to get files from one computer to another, and the difficulty of doing that without a service. And how many times I have set up like a personal server or SMB thing in my house or a NAS, like all of this stuff. But then like when I go and I'm trying to get like a universal solution, I'm trying to get something that I know anybody could use easily. And the conversation starts with, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Just set up a server and do this and this. And like, you've already lost. Like if the mechanism, like the fact that you have to set up some sort of a server, you have to set a public facing port forwarding instance is the thing that makes it that only 0.5% of people actually do it. Like that's one of the most centralizing forces. Like the existence of being a peer needs to be client and server in one. And that's what has fundamentally, like, I feel like has been solved with this. But on that note, actually, I want to go back to Dave and Mathias on like what have been the major challenges of this, of making this work.
Before you answer that, David, just actually have a quick anecdote here, because yesterday when we were doing the final build for the runtime, which is like you have to compile a bunch of code. I had that problem with this set guy where the Windows build machine, I had to get the build from that to the other machine, and like you said, with you can set up a bunch of servers and stuff. But I like to think that I'm a technical, knowledgeable person, and I have the capabilities of doing that, and I also have. I earn enough money that I can pay for that if I wanted to every month, like pay those $5 to run a tiny machine. But the problem with that approach is that, whenever you need it, it's not there because you forgot to pay it or it's expired or something is wrong or something. Yesterday when I did that build, the build computer had an ancient version of Keyed on it, but it's peer-to-peer and it just worked. And I had a room in there with myself and I dropped the build. And that's how it got deployed afterwards. I got the build out on the other computer and I checked. Everything was fine. So it's kind of like, I think it's like, that's actually like a big point to me about how it's the path of least resistance, because as soon as you have, it's like, if you ever have a funnel where there's anything in that funnel, you lose 80% of people. Just like removing the funnel is key. So
yeah, removing the friction.
No, 100%. Even since the alpha, like as much as like my SMB server is there 60% of the time. And sometimes I don't know what it is, if it's just Linux is just angry at Mac one day or vice versa. But like I will just try to connect to it and it will literally show me my list of folders like in my Finder, like nothing's wrong. And then I double click on one of the folders to add something, it disconnects. And I have to reconnect. And it just does that over and over and over again. And for 4 months, or actually hell, for a year, the path of least resistance has been to just drop a file into Keep and go to the other thing and download it.
Yep.
And it works.
Same.
It's like the human way of when you text yourself to share a note. That's what I like about it. It's like that's how my parents would do it also, and that's how me as a technical knowledge person would do it. Because why not? Like, why does it have to be more advanced than that? And why does it have to require setting up anything else? Like that should just work. So that's so powerful. And now I forgot your question, so you have to repeat it again.
So the question was more specifically just like what are the major challenges in getting across that gap of making this work on any device and so that I can just message myself a file? Like what the hell got in the way of that task?
Windows was a lot of effort.
Yeah, for the platform, especially Windows was terrible. I think I'll let David expand also, but like I think there's so many challenges. It's like peer-to-peer probably said this on a previous spaces before, but when we hire people to work at Hole Punch to work on peer-to-peer, it's like always a very depressive interview because we're always like, and by working at Hole Punch, you don't really work at peer-to-peer because you make the peer-to-peer so everybody else can work at it. So it's the terrible job that requires a lot of long nights. David is the only one left with hair, basically, at the team, as you can see in the videos. So there's so many hot problems.
He's made up. He got every one of y'all's hair. That's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's crafting it.
As I've absorbed the P2P knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing that outside like obvious technical challenges, which there's many of, one thing that's incredibly hard and that me and David spent a lot of time with and a lot of debate around in a good way, is like we have all this complexity. Like it's peer-to-peer behind the scenes is complex. There's all this stuff happening to make sure that your stuff works and it just works. How can we take all that complexity and how can we deliver that in a way that's simple, has, like David said earlier, 5 commands, just runs everywhere. It's as simple as set up as installing Keat and then you get the runtime without bubbling that complexity up. Because every time we have a hard thing, it's like always like, oh, maybe we should just bubble this up and have somebody deal with it. Nope, that's like, that's where we're like fanatics. We want to make it simple, always.
Minimalism.
And yeah, like users shouldn't care about the problems we have. We should solve those problems for everybody. And that I think has been a massive challenge to deliver, because if you use the runtime today, you will find out that it's incredibly simple. And if the trouble if you have any would probably just be that we didn't write something down in the docs or something that, like people can't find a flag or whatever. But that stuff is just so hard. It's like taking something that's underneath pretty intense and like here's a work and then presenting it in something where you're like, whoa, like 4 commands, what the heck? That's crazy, I think. And David, I'll let you add whatever you want to add.
Yeah, and we're trying to do the same thing with the code as well, because a lot of the challenge I think in coding is in making the code more simple, not in adding more complexity. And the platform code base itself, like we've got some more to do on that, but if you know JavaScript, you can read it and like you can figure out how it works. It uses many modules as well, so it's like you have to understand the modules and what they're doing. But like by the time you've gone through all that, you understand. It's like in the Matrix where it's like I know Kung Fu. It's like I know P2P. Like you do that. So it and like that's not often the way things go in like quote quote big tech. It's the more complexity. But it's finding those primitives, and I think that that Kademlia, the primitive at the bottom of all of it, is the sort of thing that enables everything else as these higher level primitives.
And we make everything extremely modular, and then like we have this philosophy that goes throughout the company that's like we do one thing and one thing well every time we do something, which means that the entire stack is insanely modular, which also translated yesterday to me having to click 1,000 buttons on GitHub as we're launching, because I had to make literally 100 repos public, and every one of those required like 10 button clicks, so my hands were really tired at the end of the day. But that's just like we don't do anything half. We do 110% all the time, and that's, you can really see this through the software, I think.
Well, it's also about taking it's that, but also part of that 110% is about taking your time and making sure that things work. I mean, there's an element of we need to get this right, but it's I think it's important to be both productive and relaxed. But obviously, the last few weeks have been very intense.
One of my metrics for, and this is really what kind of blew me away with Keat, even in the alpha, actually, for kind of proving that this worked. And when I was working with Hope, which I think he's in the chat somewhere, but with the little project that he's been building, I think it was like in the first day or whenever, we just had like a joint thing with a terminal window, and we were chatting with each other through a terminal window, just how quickly and easily you just put in a key and then it connects. And my usual kind of, what's the term, like totem or like frame for whether or not this is going to work or whether or not the normie can actually use this is I force my my tortured friends and close family circle to use all of the I made a move to Signal, and I made a move to like all of these things over the years, and they're always like, oh, okay, guys, we have to do another one of these stupid things. And when I got my sister-in-law on Keat, because we do a lot of work with the business together, she is not technical at all. And usually when I'm like, yeah, just like generate a key or do something, she's like, oh God, what?
Sorry to interrupt, guys. I have to jump. So thank you very much for everyone's time and for the listeners. I hope that you all can start playing around with Pear Runtime and Keat. Thank you.
Thanks, Paolo.
Hell yeah, thank you for joining us, man.
See you, Paolo.
Yeah. But my metric was, can she do it? And I remember when she first set up Keat for the first time, she's stressing that this is going to be some difficult thing that like I usually get her to set up something complicated because it's the safe version, it's the secure version, and it's encrypted. And I sent her a link, and then she put it in, and it connected right to it. And she like install, maybe 40 seconds, a minute from starting the install to being connected. And she was like, that's it? I was like, yep, that's it. We have a room. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, we can use this. Like, it was just like all of I could see the weight lift off her shoulders that like, oh, this isn't going to be like one of those complicated, annoying things. This is just easy. I just put in a link, and now we're in the same room, and we do things. I thought that was it was an epic moment for me. I was like, holy God, this is actually going to work.
I think, Guy, I don't know if Mathias and David can explain that a little bit better, but I think one big switch from the things we have seen in the Bitcoin ideation world like Nostr is that now the key management is different. Instead of assuming that normal user will be able to generate and store a very long private key like we do, for example, Nostr, now the devices are directly managing the identity, and some kind of federation on top of it. On top of that will basically manage the multi-platform synchronization. So it's a different approach that probably has more potential to be normally compatible than the Bitcoin-like alternative.
Well, I was going to jump in there, but you're going to have to get your sister, sorry, I wasn't listening to that part, who it was, but you have to get them to back up their identity, right? So it's going to be writing down 24 words in Keat. So I think there's still a barrier there because they will expect something like resetting a password. So the elements of centralization and the convenience that comes with that are still deeply ingrained that will be challenging to break, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's true, but it's like, I think also to a degree here, the point, I think that's also what Guy is saying, like, and that's what we're taking with the entire take is that I think any onboarding flow always should have no friction. And when we're shipping for example, the identities build of Keat, which we're finishing up right now, you'll also notice that we're not forcing people to set this up immediately because we want that no friction where people can just get into the chat immediately. And if you don't care about exporting your identity, you don't have to. I think it's really important to remember that peer-to-peer apps are not necessarily wallets, and they have different kinds of users. Like maybe you try out Keat and you throw it away, and that's fine. And then you just reset with new rooms, or maybe you want to export your identity, and we're all different. And I think that's what peer-to-peer, when done right, it's really, really good at. It's kind of like allowing you to pick your level of seriousness, which is pretty cool. Which is really hard with obviously like a wallet because then you're losing money and stuff from the get-go. So just like UX is super important here, and that's one of the things we're investing the most in also outside software development.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense to kind of go that direction with the lowest possible initial friction. And then after they have made some sort of an investment in it, after there's a little bit of a network, they have a room that they use, or, you know, messages that they share or something, then it's like, oh, well, I want to have an identity here. Like, now that I've made an investment, it's worth saving that investment. Whereas if you have to make that investment up front when you don't even know if it's worth anything to you, like, it just ends up becoming a barrier to even using it to begin with. Like, I have to do like these 10 different things. This is why I don't pay for stuff half the time. It's like when I get it's remarkable how many times, like, I'll just get that page and just see this form of like, fill out all this crap and be like, you know what, this isn't worth $5. And not just leave and go do something else.
I mean, it's like we had guys on our team that was today listening into the Twitter space, and one of the guys was like, "Oh, I got to sign up to Twitter to do this. I can't be bothered because I have better things to do." And it's like, well, why do they want you to sign up to Twitter? It's because they want to use you as an asset on their platform and grow their centralized platform. In Key, we wouldn't care. Like, you know, you do you. So like, why should you be forced to do anything? So as soon as you flip those incentives around, the UX just becomes front and center, and that's super interesting for removing all the friction, even from, you know, that's even existing for centralized things like Twitter.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I don't want to take up an infinite amount of time here, so I want to open the floor here for just a minute. But before we do that, I actually just want to ask all four of you, Samson, Dave, Giacomo, Mathias, I want to know, what is the thing, like, project 10 years out, what is the thing that you want to see built that you're most excited about, or right now that you're just most excited about that you can build with this?
We've done a thing on this. There's a video on Twitter that was posted. It was yesterday. We talk about this at length, so I would find out and put it in. But there's so many things, like think of like a P2P Uber Eats or a P2P for journalism. Like, you can slap P2P on a lot of stuff and see if you can make that work, right? But for real, the journalism one is one that sticks with me a lot because there's an audibility aspect to this. Everything's just a log, just an append-only log. So there's a way to build credibility with that, right? And that credibility, I genuinely hope, can change the way journalism works to a more pre-internet conventional approach, where it's locally focused, high credibility, but using essentially, you know, like the Autobase, which is the multi-writer module for that's used for the Keep chat. That's essentially. Oh God, I've lost my trail. I threw myself off. Where was I?
The basically changing journalism, changing the flow of information.
Oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, but that thing there, it's the Autobase thing is essentially a primitive for smart contracts as well. And so with that, you can have, you know, articles that have payments to the author, payments to the data sources that the authors used, and you can have these auditable trails within all of that. You could even get crazy with it and cross incentivize it by having another role of someone who can steal that money if they can prove that the article's not credible in some way. Like that, there's some fascinating things that could be done, and I'd love to do, but obviously I can't. There's only so much time.
Yeah, for sure.
Mathias, like, what about you?
I think you should, check out the video me and David. We did one take where we just riffed around all the apps, and we had a bunch of good ones. But what actually, just during this call, because I'm in like 20 conversations at once all the time. But two of our guys right now is just porting Twitter Spaces to the radio app. So, you know, stuff like that. That's what I'm excited about. Just two people, you know, getting annoyed that this thing that works with a login. Just make an app. Takes them like half a day, and then next time we'll use that. That's what this thing is all about. So I think if you looked at the start of the internet and you were trying to predict 5-10 years out in the future, everybody would be way off, because the thing we're actually unlocking is just we're unlocking people to do whatever the heck they want, and that's both insanely dangerous in a really good way, and like completely unpredictable. So that's super exciting. Obviously, they'll all be using Keat at that point also, so that's obviously nice.
Samson, jump in here.
We kind of segued or meandered off topic, so I'll go back to your earlier question, Guy, about Infinite Fleet. So as Giacomo got to show Plan B Network, I get to show Infinite Fleet a bit now. So this is a MMO strategy game that's being developed by Pixelmatic and published by Exordium. It's a fully fledged game. It's not some Web3 game that's not functioning and barely there. It's actually a real game with a full client server model, and it can support dozens of players and instances, and the world is scalable. You can buy ships, fly them around, create a fleet, and fight with the alien NPC faction. So it's a real game that's operating right now in closed beta, and we're doing some interesting stuff that's tangential to Bitcoin. So the assets in the game are issued on Liquid right now. We're actually planning to migrate to RGB. That's coming in the next few months. But it has NFTs. Maybe that's a bad word for people, but the spaceships are NFTs, and the reason we did that was to enable player-to-player trading. So peer-to-peer is definitely an aspect of this that we want to push forward. The interesting thing with Hole Punch and Pear Runtime now is that we can gain an additional benefit or a competitive advantage. Paolo touched upon this before he dropped early on, I think, when he was talking about Telegram, or was that Giacomo? I forgot. But they're both Italian, so it's the same thing. But there is a huge competitive advantage for companies that I don't think they've yet come to realize. So for us with Infinite Fleet, every time we have a build, we have to distribute that build. And that is, I think it's like getting up to 5 gigs or more right now. And actually more, but it gets expensive. So just build distribution alone, when the game was at peak capacity during closed beta, was probably thousands of dollars. And this is a very small audience. So you can roughly scale this in your mind. What happens to a game like World of Warcraft with millions of players and they have an update? Well, the distribution costs of the build are massive. So we've already started doing a bit of R&D and looking at what we can do. And we're looking at hyperdrive specifically. So we're changing a bit of the architecture around how we distribute the builds. And we'll have our own hyperdrive that we update. And then the game launcher, which everyone running the game is running, will become a read-only hyperdrive, and they'll read it from us and then distribute to other players effectively. So we can get rid of that entire cost of having to run a centralized build distribution system. And this can potentially scale up to other parts of the game too. It'll require a lot more architecture, but I think there's a way here to get it so the game is fully peer-to-peer. And you might be able to eliminate the bulk of the infrastructure. And outside of just build distribution cost, this is Telegram level costs. I think Telegram is running at $200 million a year in server costs. Mathias, do you know that number off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's in that range. It's insane. But even if you just look at something like Signal, they had that recent news where just running Signals is like $25 million for something that's actually a very small network. So things are less expensive.
It is.
Also, Samsung, you should try out our we have a multi-sig, but now we can hook up in Keat for signing those releases with like many people. It's super cool. I'll hook you up to that process. That's really nice. It's a really good model of distribution.
Okay, we'll check that out.
I hope though. So so if I got this right, you're retrofitting a massive, etc., with hyperdrive.
Yes, at least the build distribution part, so our deployment pipeline. But
okay.
We could potentially have it so instead of client server model, it's peer-to-peer completely. We just have to figure out how to make sure that a group of peers can't game the data. So there has to be some centralized server at the end of the day checking stuff, so you're not duping gold or things like that. But I think it's a interesting path to go on, and the cost savings could potentially be in the tens of millions to hundreds of millions, depending on the scale of your game and the users. So I think it's worth the investment. Like, you put a $500,000 into R&D, and the reward is you don't have any servers, and there's no competition at that point. So I think I'm really bullish on Keat for a number of reasons, but there's a point at which Telegram's going to have to do something to make ends meet, right? Maybe it's selling data. I don't know. Maybe they do that now. I don't know. But you don't have to worry about that with something powered by Hole Punch and with Hyperdrive or with the...
No, I just wanted to say, I also think what you'll discover when you move to a process like that, because we do that internally, is that instead of having one build, because all of a sudden they're free, you just have like every developer makes a build of the app, and your iteration speed just goes up insanely because you can have all these different versions that you're testing out. So like reducing costs, it's not just reducing costs, that's nice, but it's also because when cost goes to zero, really interesting things happen with iteration speed. And I think that's also really, really powerful personally.
Yeah, good. I think so. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm excited on for the future. I don't want to take up too much of the time, but I think Keat is very important. I think Paolo touched on this before, but the whole backbone of our communication infrastructure is very brittle. It's reliant on all these centralized servers and centralized companies. And with Bitcoin, I like to say it's nuclear proof. And I think peer-to-peer chat like Keat is the only nuclear proof layer of communication that we have. So we have to find a way to link this up with Blockstream satellite, but this is what we use after the apocalypse and the zombies come. But that's a really bullish use case. I think I've talked to Paolo about this before, but email is another thing we could see potentially with powered by Hole Punch. But email is largely broken now because it's all centralized. If you're not using a big email provider, you really can't use email anymore. You can't run your own SMTP server. But I don't know, maybe Keat just displaces email completely. We'll see. But yeah, there's a ton of other stuff that's interesting. There's another one that I was thinking of. I can't think of it right now.
With Pear terminal apps, you could quite easily make a SMTP server, I reckon.
Yeah, but it's kind of like going back to what I was saying about Nostr. If everyone can be a relay, everyone can have their own SMTP server. Maybe you could decentralize email again and make it an open protocol once more. But like, we're actually having a problem with at Exordium. We're locked out of our Google account, and they're denying payment unless we have a address proof for the company, and we can't get that basically for the card that we're using, the corporate card. But we're also locked out, so we can't use that email anymore. So we'll probably have to migrate it to another Google account that's pre-existing. But it just goes to speak to how broken email is.
They need a facepalm emoji for this really bad.
Yeah. Let me think what else I was going to say. Yeah, I think that's largely it. And with any adoption of new technology, it's always driven by porn. So, Mathias, you know what to do.
I don't think anybody wants to see me naked, but I'm sure we can make technology.
As the scale grows,
I hear only pairs is up for grabs, man.
Oh, that's
on, buddy.
Yeah.
Take one for the team.
It's right there.
I didn't say to star in it. Maybe that's your misunderstanding. But you need to build the app. Only pairs.
Yeah, nice. I understand.
Okay. I want to go ahead and well, actually, yeah, Giacomo, if you wanted to add anything on this, then we've had a couple of people who requested who've been hanging out for a bit, and I want to see if I can get their questions.
Yeah, very quick. I will not shield Plan B integration again. I will do that tomorrow in another space at this time. But there are other use cases that I would like to see. First example is a market. Not many people know that when Satoshi started off with Bitcoin, he also integrated in the first draft of the code a peer-to-peer market of goods and services based on reputation. Then he realized that in order to pull off that, you also need basically storage for all the market data, and you need a lot of stuff that goes beyond Bitcoin. So that never started. Some people tried to resurrect the idea with Open Bazaar, but then they became shitcoiners, so it never went anywhere. Then now we have like stuff like SivKit and other attempts. It will be very cool to see this stack used for a peer-to-peer market where people can sell goods and services, either physical based on reputation or an escrow, or even like directly inside Bitcoin, like selling liquidity for a channel, selling shares for a mining pool, or selling liquidity for a joint market or stuff like that. The second possible use case is I remember that I was very excited about these apps that allowed you to connect different chat protocols all together, merging identities like, paging and stuff like that. It was very, very cool, but it's very difficult to do because even from a legal point of view, the server of this new app cannot download all your Facebook messages or your email messages and keep it there. So what you do is usually using API to connect on the fly, which is a terrible UX. But with the decentralized peer-to-peer technology, you can have probably a platform that can download all your Telegram and Twitter and WhatsApp messages, putting those in another place and allow you to follow all your conversation bridging across different platforms. Matrix is trying to do something like that, but it sucks because it's on the fly. But that would be very exciting. The third thing that I think would be very, very exciting is that even for Lightning and for Bitcoin right now, we really miss a peer-to-peer communication level which is incentive compatible. We have even just like with the problem of the spam in the mempool, the problem of dust, the problem of the relay of blocks. All these problems are based on the fact that we have a payment system which is very incentive compatible, but we don't have a message sharing system on top of Bitcoin, which works very, very well. So I think that paradoxically, all these Bitcoin adjacent technology could actually end up fixing this base problem of Bitcoin. And the last use case that I would love to see, this is very personal, very nerd, so probably nobody cares, but I will say that anyway. I started a few years ago to use stuff like ROM research, like knowledge managers, stuff like that. I loved it, but it was like giving all my data to this guy. The guy is a nice guy, but still all my data. So I moved to something like Logseek. Logseek is on my server, but synchronizing across platforms is very, very hard. So a Logseek version for Pear Runtime will be very, very rad to see.
Hell yeah. I actually switched from Rome to Obsidian, which I can actually import and export like straight in from one to the other. There's just a few things that Obsidian doesn't do quite like Rome. But no, I have the exact same. I've had the same like series of issues and going from platform or system to system with the whole notes thing. But Logseek is definitely one that I looked into. Ended up landing on Obsidian.
High five to a fellow Obsidian user.
Hey, what's up?
What's up?
Oh shit. Okay. I've got a couple of out of band questions here, but I want to get to Luke. Here has requested. I think I'm in the wrong window here. Add a speaker. Here we go. Or Luca, excuse me. Luca. And we are connecting. But yeah, no, I've been using iCloud to sync my Obsidian, which it's the easiest solution. And there he is. What's up, Luca?
Traveling, so sorry if I lose the internet connection. Question for Mathias and David, I know that they're not big fans of browsers, and in the long term it doesn't make much sense. But is it possible? I've looked at the tech stack, and the hooks are in UDP. Is it possible to have like polymorphic implementation of the UDX native implementation for TCP, so we can use something like WebRTC in the browser and have like real peer-to-peer connections?
That's a good technical question, Luca. Thanks for it. I don't think it's possible because you can't do it in the browser because I don't want to get too technical, but the context switching overhead of sending a lot of small calls to those extension APIs will just kill your performance. We did a lot of stuff in the past measuring that, and it was abysmally slow and inefficient. Like we're talking hundreds of kilobytes of data per second when it's running, so really, really, really bad. Versus like hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes in the native layer. Yeah, I'm really, really bearish on browsers. I think they stop innovating and all they care about is milking ad money. That's why all the browsers are made by ad companies or companies like that. And yeah, so I don't think it's realistic.
Sorry, Luca, did you have something else to add as a follow-up?
Sorry, like guys, it disconnected. Like I don't know if you even heard my question. So.
Oh no, we did. We did. Mathias got you. There will be a recording after this if you didn't hear it. So you'll be able to get the answer if you went. Sorry that it disconnected though.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Appreciate for asking the question. And I'll send you the link. I'll try to save this here so that you can catch it later. Sorry, Dave, are you adding something?
Yeah, it's just a thing that I'm looking forward to with more apps potentially in the peer-to-peer space is the no more asking about cookies, because that damn
100%. Good God. You know, there's something interesting about the whole browser thing, and also something that I think is related to why we centralized into platforms. Like, as a general idea of how the internet progressed from kind of a bird's eye view is it seemed obvious that, like, at the beginning we were like, oh, every business can have a storefront and everybody can go to this website and go to the store, go to the business, or go to the topic or the idea. And that's really kind of how it was focused. And then so all of the protocols and stuff were built around kind of framing information or framing some business or store or something in a particular way. And obviously that's a huge part of the internet. But then as time went on, the thing that we didn't build a protocol for, we didn't really build a proper frame for, were people, were like an identity or a way to interact socially. And then as it became more widespread, it turned out that really what everybody wanted to get on the internet was other people. Like they just wanted to interact with people. So only centralized services basically solved that problem. They put an identity on it and gave you a profile, and now you can like and you can share stuff from one social graph to another social graph. But it was all owned because we'd never made it into a protocol. Yeah, we never actually fundamentally solved the problems. Sorry.
Totally, and it's because it was easier to do it centralized at first, right? And also like monetizing was easier to reason about, but not for the public. The public didn't think about how their data was being monetized. The public, I think, just thought it was about advertising. But I think for me, the thing about I think also the history of computing and so forth, comes from filing systems and things like that, right? It's boxes, it's categories, and like people aren't that. They're organic, they're messy, flawed individuals. We all are. But like, I think if we accept that and then we build something that's like, how can we make it so that people don't have to change themselves into different shapes to work with technology instead. This is what's always being said. Technology should work for us, and with the ability to control your own data, technology is working for you. I do not. There's no way I could trust an AI that's centralized. How could I trust that? I don't trust that on so many levels. And if the AI hears this and wants to kill me, good, fine, right? I guess at that point it's over, right? But like, but having our own individual AIs, that's your own data that only you can control, then that's fine. That's something that's exciting. I want excitement about technology back. Every time something's released, it's like, oh, cool, that's great. But they take your floor plans as well. They just take that. Oh, and you can't just get it without that. No, like, why? that doesn't excite me.
Yeah, it's always a context. It seems like the context is always like, I can give you this better feature or this better function if you trade me your control, if you trade me visibility. And these are always at odds. So where you give more empowerment in the social scale or in the feature or in the function, you're actually taking the fundamental power, the fundamental control over that power from them while giving them the piece that they want. And this is fundamentally attacking a far lower layer, just at a purely the data layer of putting the control entirely back in the hands of the user. And then, okay, now how can we build all these features and functions so that it's all just built on top of a foundation where it's just yours. And it's incredibly powerful. It's fascinating. And one of the things too, I wanted to hit, I've got a couple of questions here we do have another request. Anybody who wants to request, let me know, because I do have a couple of very technical questions that some people have posted in Keat that I'm trying to bring up. But we've got Alex as well with a question. What is up? You are connecting.
That's what I'm in, and I need to drop off. But
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. But just speaking to what you and David were talking about the foundation part, I think the piece about the hole punch and Pear Runtime that people miss is that the foundation is built correctly, so everything else can come. And it's sort of like, can a centralized system become decentralized? It's very difficult. So someone was commenting, I was just flipping through Twitter or X, and they said, well, anyone can technically run a relay. And I just replied, well, but they don't, because that's not the way it works, right? Let's just say you download Damus and the relay is in there and you're running it, then it's good. And that's basically what Keat is, right? You download Keat, you're a peer, like you're basically running your own relay. So I think that the difference there is it's not an option. You are a peer from the start. It's not that you can become a super peer or whatever you want to call that down the road. So you're just starting on the right foot right off the bat, and there's no need to change something else. So I'll leave that as my final piece of wisdom and insight.
We're all peers, man.
Hell yeah. Dude, Samson, seriously, thank you for joining. Same thing too is that I completely agree on that, in that context of like the client and the quote unquote relay is the same. Like it's just you're both. Like every instance of it is the entirety of it. And I was talking with Pablo actually the other day. We chatted for about an hour about all this stuff because he's building a ton of stuff with Nostr. And one of the things that he said, because I've been in this kind of mindset of like Nostr versus hole punch and like which one's going to work or which one's going to solve the problem. And I brought this up in the Nostr Wallet Connect episode that we did recently on the show. And I think it's like an episode back or 2 episodes back. And he had listened to it and he was like, I was screaming at you the whole time that I was listening. And he said that the key thing is that Nostr is not, the relay system isn't actually attached to Nostr. The relay system is just kind of how Nostr is being communicated right now. But all the nips, all the formatting of the social stuff can literally be put on top of any data layer, really. So he made the argument, which it was interesting to me. I was like, I didn't immediately think of this as well. But he made the argument that there's not really any reason why you couldn't have everything run on Nostr practically the same way on a client that is just pair-based. And you'd have to have a bridge to connect them together, which would be a relay going from Pear to the relay system. But otherwise, you could still have all of the same functionalities just on top of Pear and connect to people peer-to-peer.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. I think there is a way to tap into that and strengthen up.
I also think this is a great part of what I was saying about the shelling point. If we can manage to have a Nostra bridge built on top of the Pear Runtime, that would be a great way to reuse the community effort and the community, let's say, consensus. That would be really great.
And Mathias can 1 week.
All right, so we got Alex in.
Okay, I'm gonna drop now. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it, dude.
Thanks, man.
Alex, what is up?
Hello, thank you very much for getting me up here. My name is Alex. Can I go up?
Yeah, you're good to go. What you got? You got a question?
Yeah, I have 1 or 2 questions to ask.
Go at it.
Okay, my first question is, how does Hole Punch maintain connection stability and reliability, especially in dynamic network environments where IP addresses may change frequently?
That sounds like a question for me. It's a really good question. It's actually pretty simple because we only use UDP underneath, so there's no connections actually at the network level. It's all just UDP messages. And your addresses, the way you connect to people in the whole punch stack, using Hypercore and using Hyperswarm and Hyperdrive and all our whole Hyper stack, which we developed and gave away for free. It's all using public keys. So your identifier is actually not tied to cell towers or connectivity. It's just tied to public keys. So as your route to another person changes, which they do when you move around with your phone, as long as you communicate that in the protocol, which happens underneath, the streams don't care. As long as the data are right, they can verify the encryption, and it's all good. And like I mentioned earlier, this is all very complex and it's very intense. And the only thing that bubbles up to the user in the runtime is there's an API that's called read, where you get a message, and there's an API called write when you can send a message. So it has this really nice simplicity where you don't need to worry about it, which is our goal in life.
Sweet. Alex, did you have a second question to follow that up?
Yes, let me go for my second question. Am I audible?
Yeah, good man.
Okay, what security measure does Hole Punch implement to ensure that peer-to-peer connections remain secure and resistant to malicious attack?
That's a good question. Who wants to take that one?
Sorry, just aggressively clicking the wrong buttons, not trying to dodge the question. Sorry. We use a ton of different encryption stuff, obviously, because there's like different concerns for different things. We use extensive, and this is all open source, and you can check out our stack on our GitHub Hole Punch 2. All the hyper stack is there, is what we use for all this. But we're big fans of Libsodium, and we've donated to Libsodium in the past also, and continue to support it in every way we can. And we use tons of primitives from that. It's a really, really solid library with very, very good encryption primitives, and we use those primitives to ensure that all your connections, when you're speaking through connections, like connecting to another person, are encrypted. We don't have any need for like authentication in those connections because, again, everything is key-based. So like there's no interception. There's not like a host name you can intercept. The encryption is all pre-exchanged because you just connect to key pair. So that makes everything extremely simple, and it's really, really powerful because it's just like security per default. So we use the streaming cipher encryptions from that and the noise protocol, which is a very, very solid protocol for doing key exchange. In the streams, we use ED25519 for verifying hypercore data, and that's all backed by Merkle trees. And there's tons of stuff, and that's all in the GitHub. But basically, if there's an API in Libsodium, we probably use it, and we use it to encrypt it and ensure the data. And I would check that out. And if you have any questions, because this is obviously not something that's just answerable in 30 seconds on a Twitter space in depth, feel free to join the Pear community chat on Keat. Link is on pairs.com there in the docs. I'm happy to dive into anything with you there and share all the links.
Sweet. Alex, thank you for the questions, man. Appreciate it. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. I booted you a little too quick. But I had a question here, and this is the DHT is usually the answer to this, but I wanted to get like a little bit more in depth because this is one of the out of band questions we have here from Keith. It says, how do you find peers? And for example, in a peer-to-peer Uber, how do you find peers in your area? As an example, how does this find other people?
We should have some more runtime questions so David can answer all the questions, because this is all Mathias questions. Because I get all the boring questions that are really not interesting. Like, sorry, questions are good, but the answers are boring because it's technical. But anyways, the question is actually that there is no real true answer to that because it depends on the context. The DST is there for facilitating to a degree peer discovery, but like at a technical level. So it's kind of like saying you can find peers in a topic where a topic is like a pre-exchanged string of sorts. So for example, just to give a little bit more context to that, in Keat, the topic is the hash of the first person who joined the room, the room creator. That's like the thing you have exchanged that you all know in the room. They all have it, so you can use this to find people, other people sharing the chat, which is really simple. That's not like based on closeness or geographicalness. That's just like saying I can find some peers here, and then the DST just helps facilitate that and actually connecting people. So during the gnarly parts of exchanging the messages, you need to connect people and then facilitate that. And that's really powerful. And solid technology, and that's the thing David was referring to earlier called Academia. Then if you want to do more, let's say, social discovery, which I think is what you're looking for, like location-based or people who like trees or whatever, that's all stuff you should express in data structures. And we have a ton of primitives for that, like Hyper-B and Autobase for producing these, and that's how I would structure that. So you can kind of just have people add that information and then mix it and just make it discoverable, and you can kind of choose who you share this data with. And that's kind of like, because now you're moving from the level of like technical discovery to more social discovery, and obviously a peer-to-peer protocol can't express that social intent. That's up to you, and then if you do that, you would probably make a little library and you would share it with everybody so everybody can do it and stuff. So yeah, that's the sorry for being a non-answer, but like that's the real answer to the question.
I wanted to ask something to Dave specifically about Pear Runtime, because when I was watching one of the videos, I've already watched through everything on the YouTube, and one of the videos, I think it was the second or third of the series, something hit me because I was having a hard time trying to put a picture in my head as to where exactly this sat in the whole thing as well. But that when the project that Hope and I are working on, he pushes everything to GitHub, and then I commit, push, or whatever, and I'll pull from that, and I have to have my login and all that good stuff to get it all to work. And what struck me when I was watching the video was how when you staged a new version of the app and then seeded it, like it was basically just like it was skipping that step. So maybe the question would be, what exactly is Pear Runtime replacing? Is this a replacement for, is this kind of GitHub without a centralized thing? Is this a bit like, you think about this as like a, you have like brew install or whatever in my terminal? Like where does this sit exactly?
Sort of somewhere around there, but somewhere else as well. When you brought up the videos, I thought you were going to be like, and there's this glitch at 3 minutes and 2 seconds. While I've been doing this, while we've been doing the release and stuff, I've also been helping with the video stuff because I had to redo the screencast. So I'm traumatized by that. So there's a few things here, right? Like one of them is, I don't know if did we release this, Mathias, the Git protocol thing? Because you can also
we did not release it, but it's also something we should release, so it's fine to talk about.
Yeah, I'm okay to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll release this at some point. But you can just install this thing, and then you can use Git with Pear URLs. So you can just do like total P2P Git. And then you could, that's another use case. You could then just build a visual app with Pear, like, a Pear desktop app that provides the pull request kind of functionality. Use Autobase to do that probably, right? And then you've got those two things together. So you probably make it so that you would install that app, and then that app would just like install the Git protocol thing for you, and then you could just use Git with Pear and have a P2P app that it has all of the GitHub functionality. It wouldn't take that very long to do. So Pear is the facilitator of these things.
Got you. Yeah.
Just to add a few things here, because it's actually you're touching on a very interesting point, Guy. Because Pear Runtime, like I said, maybe this could be a little bit confusing if you're thinking about it, but it is kind of like an OS where it's like the peer-to-peer aspects it's giving you is the delivery and a few APIs to interact with your system, but it's basically like booting apps and delivering apps and staging apps and making sure that's super sound and easy and straightforward and with no infrastructure and all this stuff. And then the app you deliver can be any kind of app, but that's where the peer-to-peerness again comes in, because then you use the modules in the app to make your actual peer-to-peer thing. So it's not like those are running on the runtime. That's just deliver a new app like anything else that makes it really flexible. The thing I really like about the runtime is actually that flow you just described, because we use that intensely at Hole Punch, where we make builds of Keat 24/7, testing out new features, and instead of pushing all those builds to GitHub and having our QA team or testers or people who just want to get feedback from having to pull that and build it, and it's going wrong all the time, and permissions and who knows what. We're just distributing, making tons of different apps for keys, and they're just running those keys and they're testing and giving us the feedback, because it takes away that really annoying technical step in between that is not needed. So it makes it really, really easy for just like content delivery, which I think is actually a huge part of the iteration process, and just takes away all the nonsense of that. That's just really, really, really good, I think.
Yeah. Have we talked about sparse replication yet, by the way? I don't think we have.
We have too much stuff yet. So.
Well, maybe that's related to something else I wanted to ask on that exact topic, and we're probably running a little bit low on time. But and we got actually let me get a Sarapath here since we got a request. I'll prioritize their question. Here we go. Add as a speaker, connecting. Yeah, but one of my things was just about like is it purely from my side, like if I'm a seeder or whatever, if somebody else downloads that, are they automatically a seeder, or is that something that you have to do in the Pear commands?
Everybody who has the app can seed the app. So if you're discoverable somehow, you will seed the app. And then the seed command is explicitly, I want to tell the DHT that I am actively want people to get it from me. But for example, if I have 10 apps and you have 10 apps, as long as we have a path to each other, then you can, if you know the key, obviously, you can get those apps. The key is the access point of this. It's very important. Anybody who's running that while the app is running is also seeding it. So it's kind of like it's like this very nice network effect of peer-to-peer, where more users, the better. And the hardest thing, it's kind of ironically when you only have 2 people, because then that makes it a little bit iffy, and that's where we have a third peer always at Hole Punch that just tends to help bootstrap it. So if there's always one peer online, but it's almost never doing anything. So like that's kind of like the idea.
Like a constant mirror, yeah.
Yeah, just for the first guy, and then the network kind of takes over. Like it's kind of like a chain reaction where you need the first article to uranium to blow the bomb. So it's kind of like
yeah.
But you don't need that. It's just like that makes the convenience go up a little bit, and you can even use the blind mirrors for that. We probably gonna expose that also soon. So point being, it's just taking away the friction, especially for people who are not technical, I think, because it just takes away all this silliness of distributing builds. And now I'll let Sarah ask a question.
Yeah, well, Serapath, what's up, man? Oop, can you hear me? All right, we'll just give it a second there. No, here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up? What's your question, man?
Can you hear me?
Can you not hear me?
Just give it a second there.
No, here we go.
Super delayed.
Oh, it's kind of delayed. I don't know. Okay,
Yeah, it's
I'll
crazy
just ask
delayed.
a question anyway. Hopefully it works. When it comes to the Git stuff, I was just wondering, will that be some sort of an interface API, or is it actually implementing the whole, like everything about Git, or because it seems it might overlap with Hyperdrive or the pairs and hypercore stuff. So I wonder, how is that exactly gonna work?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Question, how that
I can answer that just quickly because it's just something David threw out, but it's basically just one of our guys spent a day implementing the Git protocol with a Swann, as you do with peer-to-peer developers. They just do stuff. So it just means that the Git tool can speak pair links, so you can push and pull from things. It's not really a replacement for anything on our stack. It's just like, why not? Because then you can run a Git repository any way you want. And it's like, like anything else, good peer-to-peer is like 100 lines of code. Somebody just threw together and then we forgot about it, and because we just moved on.
It's organic. It's organic.
Yeah, we have a lot of. If you work at Hot Bunch, you'll notice there's like a lot of very fun organized chaos where people just do things like that, and then sometimes it just ends up being, that's like the most important thing we did in the last year and stuff. So that's really cool. But yeah, so it's not a replacement for anything. It's just yet another thing you can just easily do with peer-to-peer. It's really, really fun. And then with the Pear runtime, you could distribute those. If you wanted to run a little Git server in your office, you could just run that with the runtime, because again, the runtime is just really, 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 really good at distributing apps.
Quick question, Mathias, on the whole just pair seed, and then you have the key. So when you do that from your side and you're seeding the new version of an app, and then let's say you send me the link or you send me the key to that, if I say pair seed that same thing, is my computer literally just reaching out to the network, downloading the whole thing, and then being a seeder? Like, is that all I need to do, or is that more of a I've updated the app and now I'm seeding it? Like, is that the same command to duplicate and then to announce a new one?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up, because I can see how it is a little bit confusing now. It's even simpler than that, because when you're staging the app and you're calling, we have a release command in there to explicitly mark something as released, which is useful when you're releasing, so you don't accidentally release something, but it's like a pointer you move. Anyways, getting ahead of myself. When you're staging it, that's it. You're done. Like, it's already seeded to a degree. Like, it's in the P2P data structure. If somebody discovers that P2P data structure, they can get it. Again, they need the key. That's the permission model. If they don't have the key, they can't. If they don't prove they have the key, you can't get it. That's super simple. The only thing the seed command does, and you're making me think now we should rename it, because I just said seed many times without actually referring to the seed command, so that's not good. But the only thing that command actually does is it just tells the DHT, hey, I'm online. So if you're looking for this one, you can talk to me. But as soon as, if you and I were already connected, like, for example, we were using another app together, it would already have found that path to you. So it's just kind of like helping the network being a little bit manual.
Okay, so it's kind of like just announcing. It would be the equivalent of sort of or pseudo announcing your torrent metadata out on the Pirate Bay or something like that, but it's just in the connection DHT. It's in the connection table rather than some centralized website or something. It's just making it easy to find.
And now that we talked about this, it's making me realize that we should just automatically do that when you stage for a little bit, because then it's much more organic, and then we can probably just kill that command. So it's a very productive Twitter space. So thanks for that.
Oh yeah. Bitcoin Safari. How are we on time, by the way? Can we keep taking on questions? Like we can do Bitcoin Safari, but should this be the last question, or do we want to keep rolling for another little bit?
Yeah, I could. Yeah,
I have to go in 5 minutes, but if David is around, he can proxy me.
All right. Well, I could do another 5 and then another 15, maybe.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Bitcoin Safari. What is up? Connecting takes a second here. Get that question, then we'll see where we are after this. We had a good one on one of the other. Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
We attend of the Pear Runtime. My question is, what does it all about? Because I've been late to to join. I just saw the link from a kid, then I said, let me join so that I can.
All right. Well, I guess we can answer this question really quick, but just so you know, we will have a recording after this, so you can actually catch up and listen to the beginning and everything and the introduction and everything. But maybe Dave, Mathias, Giacomo, anybody want to take that and just do like a short summary?
I think the short summary is it's a universal, powerful peer-to-peer runtime that can run any app, anywhere, desktop, mobile, embedded systems, JavaScript, unstoppable, fully peer-to-peer. All you need
no
is
infrastructure cost.
All you need to install Keat, then you get it, and then watch the videos of David on docs.pairs.com and pairs.com, and you can start putting the Bitcoin Safari on the P2P network.
Yeah, probably if I had to simplify it as quickly as I could, is you can build an app and you can stick it on a server or a website or GitHub or whatever it is and let people download it and do it all on the normal web. Or now with Pear Runtime, you can make an app and you're automatically seeding it right from your computer, and then you can give anybody a key and they can get it that way. You don't need a server, you don't need a website, you don't need some central thing like organizing it or telling you whether or not they can download it or if they have the proper account. Just give them the key, they can get it straight from you.
And you don't have to have 100% uptime either, because as long as you're seeding the latest change, like you can go offline, you can stage while you're seeding anyway, but you can take the seeder down, you can stage, and then you can seed again, and nothing will happen to the user's apps because the update will come when they get a connection. It's just that they can't get updates if you don't seed.
Yeah, one of the really crazy things is getting a Keat update over Keat. Like just having your little like update thing, and then it resets, and you have all the new stuff. And it's like right when Mathias is like done with it, and we're in like a Keat chat, and he's like, "Yeah, I finished the thing, and here it is," or whatever. And then I get a little update thing in the top corner, and I'm like, "All right, well, there it is. This is the new version."
Yeah, the cool thing about that as well is that you already have the update when it tells you have an update, as in you're just restarting with the update. So it's downloading in the background.
That's awesome.
And when David says downloading here, it's just because it's like we spent so many years getting this sparseness right. It's just getting the minimal diff. So it's like any update is basically just like 5 kilobytes or whatever. It's like tiny. Yeah,
that's the other super cool thing about this as well is like you can create an app and put like terabytes of videos in there or whatever or anything, but until the user actually tries to play that media, they're not going to be, you would need to be seeding for this, of course, then they're not going to be downloading that. And so if you skip to the middle of a video, then it really feels like you're playing from local, because like it just immediately range seeks to that point. There's no other dancing around. So it's like the sparse replication aspect is really interesting. You only need to download what you need when you need it, and then you keep it.
So, Guy, a very compact catchphrase to summarize all of this would be unstoppable applications But I think somebody already used that some years ago. I don't remember who, but yeah, I have to check.
All right. Thank you, Bitcoin Safari. And I'll add you to the list for the links I got to send out. So for the, if you want to listen to the whole thing, I'll make sure to tag you or send you a DM or something. All right, do we have anybody else from the group? I do have still a couple other out of band questions. Anybody else from the group who wants to jump up? One of the questions that I have over here is, where is data persisted? And obviously data persistence is the problem of peer-to-peer. And one of the things, and this is something that has come up in Keat a lot, which I know y'all have like a really clever way of doing, of helping this with the file system, is more explicit things come for, like one of the beauty of having not a client server relationship, but like everybody is a peer, is that you can leverage it exactly like, you kind of see the dynamics of what could be, because we've had an incredibly successful peer-to-peer protocol, BitTorrent, that had its era and then, declined with the birth of streaming, so to speak. But basically anyone can be a power seeder if they want to kind of bootstrap, act like a server without any of the frustrations or setup or complications of a server.
It's actually only one command. You just run pair seed and then the key you want to reseed. So pair run the key, you just pair seed the key you're immediately reseeding.
Okay, question then about how this relates to Keat. Does each room have a key? And is that something where I can actually use Pear on some other app some other device, and I can seed like a specific room or something? Like, how does that relate?
Ooh,
so it's a little
good question.
It's a little bit more complicated for Keat because it's many people sharing. So it's not like one big. That's just a technical blah blah blah. But like, that should totally be doable, and it's going to be doable in the future. But actually, I think something that's really important to understand here, and we talked about this a little bit, and also kind of relates into the previous discussion about like, why not just relay? One thing, and I'm just going to say it again, one thing you got to remember about peer-to-peer is that the hardest thing in peer-to-peer is when you're two people. And that's why files right now is a little bit iffy on Keat, because it's usually two people in the beginning. That's the hardest thing in peer-to-peer. When you're 1,000 people, it's really easy. But when you're two people, it's really hard, because if one of them goes away, the network is like 50% down. So in a centralized system, it's the opposite true. It's very, very easy when you're two people. It's very, very hard when you're 1,000 people. So the only thing you need in peer-to-peer, the hardest thing you have to overcome, and that's what we're doing in Keat with the blind mirroring, is like have a way where you can help those two people just hold their data a little bit. So somebody in the network can be like, I can't read this data, it's encrypted, but I'll help you just to spark this chain reaction so the data gets distributed in case one of you goes offline. That's totally the same thing we should do for files. We just haven't done it yet because we've had so much stuff to do. And that's what we're going to do. And then files are going to work the same way as Keat does today, where it just always works for messages. If you've been around for the alpha days, you remember that was kind of like the same problem in the alpha days for Keat, where you write a message and nobody would see it because you were only two people. Same thing for files right now in Keat, because we haven't enabled this and we've been too busy with the runtime and the identities, but that's like the highest thing on my radar next. And then we just enable the same algorithm and it's fine. So that's just to kind of understand the problem. It's like the reverse problem. You just need to solve the bootstrap. So even if you were mirroring that guy, I wouldn't even call it a power seeder, because the power part is kind of silly. It's just like emergency seeder. It's like the person you talk to when nobody else can get it. And in 99% of cases, you can get it from anybody else. But because of statistics, if that 1% is there, like if it's a bootstrap loop, that matters a lot, because you need to bootstrap this process. So yeah, it's kind of like, that's how the blind mirroring works in Keat. It's like the person you talk to when you can't talk to anybody else. And that should be the same thing here. And like, again, all blind mirror data, anybody can do it. Super simple protocol. I don't know if we open source that yet, but we're definitely going to open source that, because it's like, it's really powerful for everybody.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. The file thing is going to be really exciting, because you can kind of leverage that. I've been shocked at how well messages come through, even when my my wife, it's funny. One of the other things I talk about, like the metric or the totem I use for like whether or not this is going to work, was how quickly and easily could my sister-in-law handle it, or was it going to be frustrating for her? Another thing that I thought was really funny the other day is I have my wife on it, and like that's where we do our main little like fam group chat now, and I asked her about it just yesterday because we've been using it for a while. And I asked her about it and like, have you been enjoying it? Has it been working or whatever? And she says, I'm a little annoyed because like 1 out of every 10 notifications, like I don't get. And it was hilarious that I was like, that's beautiful. That's absolutely amazing that we're at the point in an entirely peer-to-peer thing where she's in like one room with like me and like my sister-in-law. It's like 2 or 3 people. Like it's just like a couple of peers. And her frustration is that like a few of the notifications don't show up. They'll show up immediately. Yeah. And it's like, oh my god, we did it.
She doesn't know the pain we've been through.
That's crazy.
It's really funny you say that, guy, because I literally looked at a commit today that was like fixed, notifications failing 1 out of 10 times, kind of like almost verbatim that. So
oh wow, that's funny. That's funny.
You can tell her it's like fixed very soon.
Awesome. All right, well, maybe this is a good time to wrap it up then. Let's do final thoughts. Giacomo, we haven't heard from you in a bit, and wrap this thing up.
Very excited to see this taking shape. I already tried out Kit a little bit, but I look forward to try the first third-party apps built on the Pear Runtime open source infrastructure. Really looking forward, and especially I will be very focused on any kind of interaction between this stack and Bitcoin, and this stack and all the other Bitcoin adjacent freedom tech.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Dave, let's jump to you.
Thanks for having me. Pair on.
Hell yeah. Matthias.
Thanks as always for moderating, Guy. You're awesome. Thanks for everything you're doing for Keith. We appreciate it. We love all your work. And I just saw in a chat with my guys now that they managed to hook up the Twitter Spaces into the runtime. So maybe next time we can live stream it on Pear Radio. So that's the power of peer-to-peer.
Awesome, dude. Thank you, man. Thank you for letting me host. Yeah. All right. With that, we will wrap this up. Pear Runtime has launched. Literally congratulations, guys. This is awesome. That's and I know just chatting with the dev I've been working with, it's funny how many comments. Like I'll just be like late last night, I comment and he was like, "Oh my god, this solves so many of the frustrations of a thing that I was trying to do with this," and I'm just like giddy and I'm like having a hard time going to sleep. So congratulations on this. It's really exciting stuff.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I think the future of both Bitcoin, like I think this is going to be huge for Bitcoin as well. Lightning, like these peer-to-peer apps, like getting Lightning apps and Bitcoin wallets to connect to each other without some centralized server. Like there's so many possibilities here. So everybody go check this out, pairs.com, and that is plural. I had a couple people go to pair.com and it almost even looks similar. It's weird.
No, we know.
But pairs.com, check it out, and I'll have the link when this is posted on Bitcoin Audible to basically everything I can find, the YouTube channel and everything in the description. But yeah, start exploring, start building, be a pair. Thank you, guys.